All right, hey, yo, good evening. It is it's 7:27 p.m. on June 13th, 2020. This is Ray Eason with the Ancient Tree of Life spiritual show, or spirituality show. I'm kind of changing the name because I'm starting up a podcast show, and the podcast show is going to have the name Spirituality Show in it. But this is Ray Eason with the Ancient Tree of Life channel. So, I've been posting a little bit about some very old ancient Kemetic Egyptian or ancient Egyptian lore and stories over the past probably week or so on Instagram, a little bit on Facebook as well, right? So what I wanted to do a live broadcast. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about it, see if there were some people online, and also we could have a discussion. If there's not a lot of people online right now, you can watch this show in its entirety afterwards, because it will be rebroadcasted as a re-recording. So, because a lot of the crazy things which have been happening in the world, we got all these, we have the protests going on, and we have the rioting and the looting, and this stuff is happening all across the world, right? Because of an individual named George Floyd being killed in the United States, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There's been a lot of tension and a lot of craziness just going on, right? A lot of crazy stuff. And so what I wanted to do was I kind of just wanted to, I felt the need to talk a little bit about some of this information, which is very old and ancient as far as ancient Egypt goes, because I feel like things are getting so out of hand that I feel the need in the inside to actually do something about it, and to help present a front just in case things get super crazy. Things seem to be dying down a little bit, or it might be just that I am taking a back seat to a lot of the watching of the news and the media and all the crazy stuff that's going on. It was getting to me. My head was starting to mess with me. I was being fatigued emotionally. I was just being drained, and it was really starting to get to me. So I took a little bit of a back seat, but I remembered reading in a very old tome about a period in the very beginning parts of ancient Egypt, called the Epic Wars, right? And if you're on my Instagram channel, the Ancient Tree of Life on Instagram, or if you're on the Facebook channel called the Ancient Tree of Life as well, you've probably seen some snippets on there, me posting a few pages about this, right? On Instagram, you probably only saw like the first part of it, but if you're on the Facebook page, it actually shows the entire like 4 or 5 or 6. There might be 6 or 7 pages on there, talking or going over the Epic Wars, right? So essentially, what were the Epic Wars, right? And I have a little bit of a premise of what I want to talk about over here. Before we get into the Epic Wars, what this particular presentation or what this particular discussion is going to be about, right, is essentially about one of the major and probably the most awesome things about ancient Egypt was their whole belief in the afterlife, right? The ability to live, die, and be reborn, right? Reincarnation. And up until probably a few years ago, I didn't completely believe in it, right? I didn't completely believe in the whole idea of reincarnation, simply because I just thought it was something people talked about or something people believed in. But unless you have a book or some sort of description or direction about how it can be done, right? It's like, well, then it's just one of those whim-oriented things, right, that not everybody can do. So I just sort of totally disregarded it. But as I learned and I studied and I read a bit more and dug a little bit deeper into the actual spirituality of the ancient Egyptian culture and spirituality, and I won't say religion, because in my heart it was not really a religion. It would have became a religion afterwards because of doing these things cyclically, right? My definition of a religion is when you do something over and over, it becomes religion. But when it's spiritual, it's more so of it could be an independent thing, but you can add rituals, prayers, certain things that you do all the time in order to make it sort of religious, right? So for this particular definition, or for this particular show, we're going to call it spirituality, right? Ancient Egyptian or ancient Kemetic Egyptian spirituality. So, like I said, I really didn't believe in the whole idea of life, death, rebirth, and reincarnation. But after becoming involved in the ancient ways of learning and understanding and meditation and prayer work, and seeing underneath the physical reality of this world, seeing underneath it, right? Because we have this world, this tangible world that you can see, but this tangible world that you can see is a manifestation of the world that precedes it, a manifestation of the energy that created this world, right? And this world is continuously being created, and therefore this energy that precedes it is always creating or recreating this world, right? So this particular segment is going to be called Life, Death, and Rebirth, the Cycles of Reincarnation. And I kind of just want to touch a little bit on it, but not overly, because for one, you really can't totally explain or detail something like that in a show of this caliber. It's something that has to be experienced. For one, you have to study, you have to learn, you have to meditate, and then these things have to be revealed to you. There's only so much that you can be taught or learned, and things must be revealed to you through the process of meditation and prayer work, right? So I kind of want to leave you with that. But like I said, I really didn't believe in reincarnation, but I didn't believe in it for a very long time, until like probably a few years ago, right? And then I sort of understood where it came from and how it could be fathomed and how it could actually come into core, into being. And if you've been watching my show for any particular period of time, if you've been following me on Instagram or on Facebook or on Twitter, you'll see a lot of my posts deal with ancestral belief, right? Ancestral worship, which is worship of your ancestors, communing with your ancestors, remembering your ancestors, working with them, and that information sort of being accessible to you that they once had, sort of flowing through you. And usually you acquire, receive this information when you meditate, right? And when you meditate, it sort of makes you a little bit more open to various information coming through. That's why meditation is a core and a big thing, right? So, like I said, reading through various books, I came across very old information that I'm going to sort of touch bases on here. Basically, you see, the ancient Egyptians, they studied and they worked with the concepts that deal with life, death, and rebirth all the time. This was an intricate part of their daily lives, right? Kind of like a part of our daily life is getting up, going to work, having lunch, coming home, having dinner, watching TV, right? Well, they didn't have TV back there. They may have had work. They definitely had work. But an integral part of their mentality, their thought process would have been these particular things, right? Also, these energies, or what we call the gods, or the deities, or what they would call the Neturu, these archetypes being symbolic of energies that exist in our realm and also in the other world, right? So, so basically, like I said, they studied a lot of this information. They studied and worked with it over the period of thousands and thousands of years. And they pretty much, from my understanding, they believe that when a person lived and that person passed on, that person went to another realm, right? Well, if you remembered that person, if you could connect with them, essentially. And we know this because of how the pharaohs were, when they passed on, they were placed in a tomb, and there were certain rituals around the wrapping of their body and the embalming, the taking out of the organs, also writing or scribing on their tombs. There was a very meticulous process that came along with the funerary rites that came along with their people passing on or dying, right? So they essentially learned to work these practices into not just everyday life, but also when these people would pass on. Well, it's from my experience that you are able to commune, and you've probably heard this before too from mediums and people holding seances and things of that nature, where they're able to commune or attune with these energies which are no longer here, and you can receive information from them as well, right? So I believe that what they did was they were able to actually tap into this vibration or this other life, right, where their people had passed on, friends, family members, loved ones, their leaders, right, the priests, the priestesses, the pharaohs, where they would have passed on, and by reverencing, worshiping, and remembering, that information can sort of fluidically flow to you, and you can receive information from them. And this is what we call ancestral worship. And that's just touching a little bit on the possibility of the reincarnation cycle, right? So like I was saying, they felt that energy could be read, felt, synthesized, and even interpreted, right? And there are stories where these people, this energy was actually able to fully come back and be reborn inside of a vessel or inside of a body. There are stories of, if you've read about the Emerald Tablets, Thoth kind of talks about where his consciousness, he would go underneath the pyramid, and then he would rejuvenate himself. His mind or his spirit or his soul would leave. It would find a body, and then he would live his life through this other vessel, right? Sometimes these individuals would partially remember who they were, and then sometimes fully remembering who they were, right? And I guess it would depend upon environment, exposure. It would depend on what type of artifacts or environment was around this person in order to lead them towards totally remembering who they were in their previous lifetime. Say, for example, let's just say, for instance, you were living in Ancient Kemet at, say, like at a particular time, right? And there's all these buildings up, there's all these temples up, there's all these pillars up, right? And there's pictures there, there's hieroglyphs, right? And there are prayers, and there's pictures and all these things, right? And if this energy had been worked with intricately enough when you were born, say, for instance, the pharaoh being born, these things might wake him up, and he might eventually remember, oh, this may have been who I was, right? Or it may be that this is the son of one of these pharaohs, or one of these one of the leaders, or even one of your ancestors during that time frame. And then you remember fragmented pieces of who you may have been, or just little things that would waken you up to potentially who you may have been, right? And if you had done this over the period of like years, thousands of years, right, millennia, you would probably get, your culture, your society would probably become a little bit more adept at understanding these cycles, when they happened, how to encourage them to happen, right? And how to encourage individuals in order to remember. So, like I said, what I wanted to get into was basically the epic wars, and kind of why I started posting a few things about the epic wars, because of all the stuff that was going on here recently in the news and in the media. One of the things I do want to recite is one of the statements from the Book of the Dead that I read in one of the books that I was kind of researching and going over. And it kind of goes along with this whole life, death, rebirth, and reincarnation cycle, right? And it says, and I quote, "I have been given eternity without limit. Behold, I am the heir of eternity, to whom have been given everlastingness." And I've read this a few times, and I thought, okay, I'm just reading this, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, sounds kind of cool, right? But as I've reread it here the last few days, and I reread some of the old texts that I had been learning about the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Kemetic Egyptians, it started to make a lot of sense. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Because if you factor in ancestral worship, right, ancestral adherence, and the belief that your ancestors reside inside of you, right, inside your blood, inside your DNA, right, if you really believe in that, then you start to realize that this stuff, these subtle words, actually make a lot of sense. And then when you tie it into some of the older ancient texts that talks about Aset and her children, and the rule of the pharaohs, and how the pharaohs were given rulership, or given the ability to rule in her name, right? And I mentioned in her name because in the first dynasties, from what I'm learning, I went back and did quite a bit of research. Well, not quite a bit, but I've been doing quite a bit of research, and I recently read the first dynasty worked with the they worked with the energy of Aset and Asar, which is Isis and Osiris, a bit more than the later dynasties did, right? In the beginning, they were very much so about lineages and bloodlines, and being given rule and control over the ruling of Kemet by the gods, or by a set. And the later generations kind of got away from that a little bit more, and then it became more about the pharaohs who wanted to be more like gods, and therefore they kind of changed things a little bit to where they were more like akin to Re or akin to Ra, and they were less about Aset and Heru and Osiris in that particular Trinity-based lineage or bloodline, right? And so this particular phrasing kind of goes in sync with some of the stories that go along with how Aset created a family line, right? She created children that had her blood and her essence and her spirit, and those were the ones who actually started the great Egyptian empire back in the day, right? So I'm going to go ahead and wave at a couple of people here. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. We're here on Instagram, so I just want to say thanks for joining us on here. I'm on Instagram, but I'm also on, I believe we're on Twitch as well, and on Twitter, and also on YouTube, in addition to Instagram, right? No, I am not, to my knowledge, I am not a descendant of the ancient Egyptians. That bloodline, from what I understand, was completely annihilated, and it's sort of gone, right? But from I believe that particular energy can be tapped into. It's still there. There is no energy or anything that completely dies. It's still there. It just has to be sought. It has to be tapped into, and it has to be worked with. And then once you enter those gates, or once you tap into that energy, if you have a devout heart, right, if you're not going in with your ego, this information will slowly start to descend into you, and you'll start to receive it. And then if you're devoted over the course of years or even lifetimes, right, you'll start piecing this stuff together, and it will make more sense as you live it. So no, I'm not descendant of the Egyptians, but I do work with this energy on a very intimate level, because to me it is family. This energy has touched me in ways that I can't even explain. I felt love. I felt all the upper vibrations of joy and love. I've also felt the lows of it all, because you can't have highs without lows, and life is a mixture of both, right? A lot of what the ancients taught was what you may have heard called the middle pillar or the middle path. And it's about how you take the left and the right, and then you blend it with the middle, right? And that's what the pyramids in ancient Kemet actually represent. You've got the pyramid in the middle, which is Giza, which I believe is actually called Minkuare. And then you've got the left and the right pyramid, which is Khufu and Khafre, right? And it represents the left and the right, the pillar of severity, the pillar of mercy, and then also in the middle you have the blended path, which is the middle path, right? And that's what the three pyramids represent as they syncretize with the three stars in Orion's belt, right? Yes, essentially gnosis, right? It would be essentially the receiving of information, or gnosis. So I wanted to jump into the whole epic wars thing, and the reason why I've been sort of posting stuff about this, right? With all this crazy stuff going on in the world, right? We had almost, I felt like we were on the brink of civil war within our country, right? I'm in America, I'm in the United States. If you guys are not in the United States, I'm sure you've looked at the news, you've seen stuff online, and you've seen this crazy stuff that has been going on, right? This total, just crazy insanity-oriented stuff, right? And it really looked like we were at the brink of civil war. I was even hearing people talking about it, right? And I was just like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? And more so, what the hell are we going to do, right? I've never witnessed anything like this before. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if people were going to start getting crazy in the streets. I had no idea. And all I could think is, how the hell am I going to defend myself and the people that I love? It's all I could think about. How am I going to help protect people? How am I going to help during this particular time frame? What am I going to do? And then I started thinking back at the stuff that I had been learning and the stuff that I had been reading. And I started remembering this old ancient Kemetic stuff, which is based in the lore of Aset and her empire, right? The first dynasty of ancient Egypt, right? Not these later dynasties, because you know and there's very little information out there about the first dynasty. I did some research online, and I was looking stuff up, and I only came across a little bit of information about the first dynasty, right? And it mentioned how the pharaohs, their names, they had 5 names, 5 tutelary names, and those names were based in one of them was the name of Horus or Heru. The second name was the name of Nekbet, which is the vulture goddess. The other name was, there were 2 names for the second name. The first name was the name of Horus. So the pharaoh would have like 5 names, right? And I thought this was crazy because I had 5 names, right? My mom, I don't know what the hell she was thinking, but I've got like 5 names, right? I got like a first name, 2 middle names, a first name, 2 middle names, and 2 last names, right? Don't ask me why. My mom was just like, throw this in there. I got like 5 names, right? So I thought it was crazy, right? But I thought it was kind of cool. So then when I was doing this research, I learned that the old pharaohs, they would adopt 5 names, right? And I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of interesting. So they would have a Horus name, 1, right? They'd have a 2 ladies name, which if you've worked or read a bit about the ancient Kemetic Egyptians, there were the 2 ladies, right? And the 2 ladies were representative of Nekbet, which ruled Upper Egypt, or Upper Kemetic Egypt, and she represented the white falcon, right? And then you had Aset, so you had Nekbet, the first Horus name, Nekbet, which was of Upper Egypt, and then you had Aset, which was of Lower Egypt, and she was the serpent, right? Because the serpent of wisdom. And then there was the golden Horus name, number 4, the golden Horus name. And then there was the 5th name was the name of Re, of the sun god, right? So there was those 5 names that were sort of put together to be that particular pharaoh's name, right? This is the first time I had ever heard about it, which was last week sometime. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Now, granted, you see these other pharaonic names, but they're not the same. They're not based in the same tutelary structure of that naming convention. Because like I said, they got away from the reverence of Aset, Asar, and Heru, or Isis, Osiris, and Horus, right? They got away from that. And they became more about themselves and their linking to Re, which, if you've read some stories about Aset and Re, Aset and Re had an issue. She wouldn't bow to an egotistical god, an egotistical sun god. And there's also a story about how she poisoned the sun, learned his magical name, and gave that power, that magical name, to her son, Heru, so that he became the sun god later on. Which is why you see Horus in some iterations where he is the sun god, whereas Re was also the sun god, because Aset kind of did some stuff to Re, and she kind of acquired that power for her son for a particular reason. But what I was talking about was how in the Epic Wars we had all this stuff going on in the United States, and I was wanting to find out, and even across the world, right? There were protests and marches, for what I understand, in Ireland, Germany, even over in the UK, there was stuff going on, right? And I was totally blown away by this stuff, right? And not to mention, I was starting to freak out. I was totally starting to freak out, because I was like, if we are going to have a civil war, if shit's going to hit the fan, how are we going to really survive this? How are we going to protect ourselves? How are we going to contend with this, right? Sorry if my TV in the back keeps going on and off, you guys. I forgot to turn it off. Let me turn it off real quick, because I know it's probably getting kind of annoying. Okay. Alright. Turn that one off too. Okay. Alright. Sorry about that. So, and so I started remembering some of the stuff that I had read about, right? And more so the epic wars, right? From the time frame, thousands and thousands of years ago, where we have the brothers and the sisters of Aset, Asar, and Nephthys were at war with their brother Set, right? The wicked brother Set, right? So, and if you can remember, or if you don't know, Set was the jackal-headed god. He's kind of representative of just wickedness and evil, and just doing very, very bad, not nice things, right? And essentially, you have Aset and Asar, who are their brother and sister, but they're also consort. They're also partners, right? And I know this sounds kind of weird, but it's more so if you think of this particular energy in sets of energy in pairs, right? You've got a female and a masculine, right? And that's really what it represented. There's even lore and some stories that Aset and Asar actually existed. They were actual people at one point. But I've yet to find any actual information on this that can be shared. But it was believed that Asar was an actual pharaoh at one point, and he actually lived. Aset as well, right? So you have Aset and Asar, who are paired energy, and you also have Nephthys and Set, which are similar energies, right? And so Asar would have been the masculine version. It's said that he was very noble, very wise, very soft, very kind. And Aset was the female mother, who was very wise. She was the mother of magic. She was the one that taught magic and incantations, or words, how words were important, right? Exactly, yes. You can think of them as exactly as anthropomorphic. Exactly, yeah. And so you have them being as two similar energies, and you have Nephthys, which was a goddess or an energy of the underworld, kind of, and Set was that of the desert, right? And of storms and essentially chaos, right? So you have these four siblings, right? But they're more so, they're meant in, even though they are separate, they're archetypes of an understanding or set of energy, right? And so you learn through working with this energy that even though they're separate, they also are symbolic of one another. They're also they're similar in nature. And like I said, when you learn to work with the middle pillar or the middle path, you learn that you have the left and the right, and you have the middle. You have the path of severity, the path of mercy, and you have the blended path, right? So a lot of this learning is about taking these disparate energies and understanding them individually, and then learning what they mean when they're paired up, and how you become a complete person by understanding these variances of energy, right? And I use the term energy a lot because to me it is energy. It's subtle energy that you are learning from an external source, and you're learning to synthesize it within yourself in order to be a complete and whole person, right? And if this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense, I completely understand. This is more so, this is a synopsis of like I said, the title, which is Life, Death, Rebirth, and the Cycles of Reincarnation. I'm not trying to teach or share a lot of the older stuff that I have already talked about in this particular segment. You'll have to go back and watch the other videos. But I just kind of want to get back to the epic wars, right? So there was this great war that was happening where the brothers and sisters were at odds or at war with Set. Set was trying to take over the throne of Egypt, and he was trying to take control of Egypt, right? Because he was the older brother of Asar, and by right he should have inherited the throne when Asar died, which is why he killed Asar, so that he could inherit Kemet, right? And so you've got this great war between Aset and Set after Set kills Asar. So Set kills Asar. He essentially dies, right? Even though he's a god, he's torn into various fragments, and he's tossed across the world, right? He's his fragmented parts are sort of lost in the world, and Aset has to go, and she uses her magic and she puts him back together, but he doesn't want to reside here on the physical plane anymore. He wants to stay on the other side, and he stays on the other side, and he helps the people who die. He leads them to the other side, and he helps them find their place on the other side, right? Once again, a lot of this goes along with the whole idea of life, death, rebirth, and reincarnation. A lot of it may not make a lot of sense listening to it as far as it being logical, but it ties into the whole ideology of the cycles of reincarnation. I'm going to answer something here. Fire, earth, wind, water, and ether. Essentially, the siblings, they kind of tie into those particular archetypes. Yeah, exactly. Asar would have been more earth-based. Aset would have been more, I believe, more water-based. Set would have been more fire-based, and the Nefethis probably would have been more wind-based. But I could be wrong on that because I haven't really broken them down as far as elemental-wise. So don't quote me on that. But a lot of it is like sort of elemental or archetype-based, right? So there was this great war between Aset and Set, right? And essentially, at one point, Aset actually forced out the Sethian horde. She forced them out of Egypt, and they were no longer able to. His followers, his soldiers, were no longer able to reside within Kemet. But then Set plotted to once again reattack and take over Kemet, right? And so I guess, to make a long story short, there was a great war, right? There was a battle between the followers of Aset and the followers of Set, and they clashed and they battled, and the war was ended by Aset summoning her. The legend says that she summoned her Imperial Guard, which were a group of people who were in her military, right? They were trained to be and act in such a way that the lore and the stories talk about how they embodied not only physical attributes, but they embodied these metaphysical or magical attributes of warfare, right? She also summoned what's called the 7 scorpions, or the 7 demons of Aset, and they're supposed to be reminiscent of 7 extremely powerful scorpions that helped to attack or defend them against the Sethian horde. So the reason I'm kind of telling you guys the story, it's not that these stories are supposed to be fully understood, at least in this particular video, because I'm combining a lot of information into one video. But it's to let you know that there was a great war that happened a long time ago between this good archetype and then this very chaotic bad, I hate to use the term evil, right, but this evil bad archetype, and they clashed, right, and then good kind of triumphed, right. And when we had all this stuff happen in the United States and across the world, it kind of had me thinking about how do we contend with a great evil if it did happen, right? And so I started to think about this particular war and how these ways might be used in order to help maintain control, how it might help to how we could actually raise a particular segment of people, both mentally and physically, that might be able to help keep the balance, right? And that's essentially what the posting that I did on the Instagram page and on the Facebook page was about the epic wars, right? It was basically trying to get people to think, okay, there was this great thing that happened, this great war, this great battle, this great evilness, right? And we've got this crazy stuff going on in life. What do we do about it? How do you contend with people that are not really thinking? They're doing what they want to do. How do you contend with that, right? Because that's essentially what evil is. It's something that that's totally self-centered, selfish, egotistical, and does not care about logic, right? And that's why I wanted to share this information with you guys, because what I wanted to do, I wanted to start talking to people about how you can actually start to use this lore, this understanding, in order to help try to make our world a better place, right? And that's really what a lot of it is about. Yeah, thanks a lot. So I had somebody that said thank you, so I just wanted to say thank you to them. So, yeah. So what I kind of realized after looking at a lot of the stuff that was kind of going on, after looking at, you've got these people that are looting, these people that are rioting, you have people who are just they're burning, they're doing all this crazy stuff. It made me ask the question, why are they doing it? And then we have the obvious, they're doing it because somebody was wronged, right? George Floyd was wronged, right? A man was murdered, a black man was murdered, right? But a lot of the things that continuously happened after his murder kind of just started making me think, this is getting out of hand. Why are people stealing things they don't need? I mean, I can understand if you're going to go like loot for food, right? Things that your family needs, like Pampers or diapers for your children, food, milk, water, things of that nature. But when you start taking like TVs and video game systems and computers and things that you really don't need in order to survive, it made me start asking the question, why are people so materialistic? Why are these materialistic things so important? And then I started realizing it's because their minds, their souls are based in this base material understanding, or this material world. They don't have the higher understanding to think, I don't need these physical things. What I need are the things to allow me to survive, so that I can get to the next moment, right? And the next moment, not just living from moment to moment, but you should live for the higher understanding. That's what I'm trying to get at. You should live for the higher understanding, right? We all are spiritual or esoteric beings inside of a physical body, right? And I think some of us have forgotten that we are more than just these fleshy physical things, right? We are sparks of divinity encased in these physical bodies. And when I see a lot of these heinous physical acts going on, right? Like there were some police officers that were killed. I'm sure there were people out there who were killed or hurt that were not police officers, right? When you've got this horde mentality, or this mob mentality, people start to sort of they fall back into their animalistic base self, and it's sad. It's really sad when you realize that the only reason they're doing that is because they don't know that they can strive for more. They don't know that they can mentally focus on a higher plane or a higher level and be more, right? And I totally understand that there is injustice because of what happened with George Floyd. I completely understand it. But there were and are things that are happening outside of that which don't need to happen because of his death. Like I said, the looting, the arson, the rioting. It needs to be more logically planned out. There needs to be some unity in the communities. There needs to be talking. There needs to be discussions. I've seen a lot of people that are arguing blatantly on social media, on the news. there was this one video that I saw where there was this black woman and she was talking to this white lady, and the white lady was on the side of the Black Lives Matter, and the black woman is trying to explain that I'm not an oppressed person, and the white person is trying to tell her, well, but essentially you are, and your people are, and the black lady is getting offended because of it. And they're arguing, right? And it's more so because one side is not listening, and I think that's what we really need to do. There needs to be a lot of listening going on instead of just a lot of reacting or acting out. That's a lot of what these videos are about. It's about how to understand. It's about how to separate your lower emotions, your lower aggression from your higher self, so that you can understand your lower aggression and your lower passionate self, right? Well, once again, like I said, it's about the middle path. It's about the left and the right, the severity and mercy being blended together in order to have unity or to understand. And I think that's where we need to be at right now. I said in the very beginning, I think it was a few weeks ago when I put out one of my videos, and I can't remember which one it was, but I said after all this is said and done, there will need to be unity, right? The people will need to be healed, because we're going to have gone through all of this. People are going to be hurt because you've got all the arguing, you've got all the confrontation, you've got all the aggression and the anger, right? People are going to need to be healed. And what do you do when people need to be healed? You have to talk. You have to understand. There has to be things put in place in order to help the nation and the world heal as a whole. So I have a question here. What do you think the foundational culture of the Egyptians were? It's a good question, because as I was writing a scenario or a synopsis for this, what I was going to talk about, that was the core thing that I was thinking about. I think it's sun and moon worship. Not necessarily. It's not sun and moon worship. Those are mechanisms inside of their spiritual culture that help them to understand certain aspects. Like the moon would represent wisdom, it would represent intuition, it would represent the subtle part of life, the part of life that when you close your eyes, after you sort of let all the anxiety and the antsiness and all the ego sort of simmer down, that subtle part of life, that more emotional part, that's what the moon really represents. And then when we have full moons, that fullness pulls at us, pulls at our emotions, kind of like the moon pulls at the tides in the water. The sun represents the self, the physical self, right? It represents the giver of life. It also represents the ego, which is what the sun god Ra or Re represented, right? So, not worship, sorry, comprehension. Oh, no problem at all. Yeah, so the sun and the moon would have been these vacillating archetypes or characteristics or mechanisms inside of a spiritual framework that I believe was completely and totally based around ancestral worship. In a nutshell, that's what I believe the ancient Kemetic Egyptians, with their lifestyle, their culture, their spirituality was all about. It was about remembering, reverencing, and worshiping your ancestors, those who were here before you, that passed on, that went to the other side, that were there, and you still communing with them still being able to help you or talk to you, or the continuation of life, if anything, for lack of a better word, the continuation of life. I remember somebody mentioned something about the Lion King, like I think it was like a while back, I can't remember, like a year or so ago. Now the Lion King's thing was the circle of life, right? And that was an African-based theme. That show was the whole Simba thing, right? They were in Africa. It was basically about African life, right? And so it's about the circle or the cycle of life, about continuation, right? And so I think that the cultural foundation of the ancient Kemetic Egyptians was the cycle of life, the continuation of it all, right? And Everything else was just sort of there in order to help understand how to understand how that framework worked in a nutshell. In a nutshell. So perfect example, if you mention the moon worship, right? In order to really understand how this life interacts with the next life and how that next life wraps back around to this one, you really have to meditate. Meditation is a part of it. It's not the only part of it, right? So you have to have meditation. You have to have prayer work. There are mantras you can use, certain things that you can say that invoke certain vibrations inside of you, right? And those things would have been created by the ancients that would have helped them in order to attune with those particular vibrations for understanding, because it's all about understanding, all of it. How to do this, how to perpetuate life. How do you perpetuate life even after life, right? And so I believe that's what the foundation of the ancient Egyptians were. This spiritual longevity, right? This, like the quote says here, I have been given eternity without limit. Behold, I am the heir of eternity, to whom have been given everlastingness. I mean, that's some powerful stuff if you really understand what it is that it's saying. And then the next question becomes how? How do you do this? How do you perpetuate life, right? And this has caused many a great questions, many a great arguments, many a great myth, many a great lore. There's all types of things associated with this. I mean, you've got from you've got things relating to, say, certain fictional characters in history living eternally, immortals, right? We've heard about immortals, whether it been demigods, right? The heirs, the sons and daughters of gods, right? Who, well, granted, they didn't live forever, right? They eventually died, but maybe they lived a lot longer than, say, like the regular people, right? And then you also have stories and tales of, say, like you have vampires and witches, right? Which we know witches don't live eternally; they do die, right? And witches are basically practitioners of these magical or these higher arts. Vampires, that story has been misconstrued on so many levels. Vampires don't exist on the levels that fictional tales have been created to sort of cater to. It's more so an ideology that comes along with the longevity of living life after death, and a lot of this stuff kind of goes back to these core cultural influences of ancient Kemetic Egypt, or ancient Egypt, which was based in Africa thousands, if not tens of thousands of years ago, right? A lot of it kind of goes back to this understanding, or this question of how do you perpetuate life, and that's kind of what I'm going to take the channel to next. Not in this particular video, but if you've been following me for any period of time, you know that I have been putting out information, whether it been ancient Sumerian oriented information, ancient Egyptian oriented information. I kind of don't deviate from those two cultures. I may include a bit of ancient Atlantean information because those three cultures were based in Africa, and I kind of feel like that they were sort of reflected iterations of one another. Ancient Atlantis being extremely older, ancient Kemet being the second iteration, and then ancient Sumer being the third. It's said that ancient Atlantis existed before Kemet, and when ancient Atlantis fell, the understanding went over to ancient Kemet, or ancient Egypt, and those priests, or that understanding from ancient Atlantis, actually helped the ancient Egyptians understand the things that they learned over in Atlantis, and that's why they sort of grew to the next sort of empire in that particular part of the world. And then the Sumerian information, it's a totally different tangent, the ancient Sumerian information, because it's more so in, some people want to say it's in the Middle East, so it's The information is similar, but it's a little different. But all of my videos will resonate with this whole understanding of how to understand yourself, how to understand yourself from the inside, how to teach your brain to let go of the ego so that your mind can take flight, right? So that you can learn to understand how to be more than just the base self, right? How to be more than just this, right? Because you are, the Asiatics, like I said, ancient Sumer, Mesopotamia is totally different than the ancient Atlantean and ancient Kemetic Egypt. But it's kind of the same. I've seen similarities. I've worked with all three. The ancient Sumerian information I worked with quite a bit, and I did resonate with it. And at sometimes I did resonate with it more than I resonated with the ancient Kemetic information, simply because it seemed like there was more information there because it was more modern. Whereas with the ancient Egyptian information, there's so much misinformation out there because you have Egyptologists and people who are not working the ancient spiritual system of the ancient Egyptians. They're not working it, so they're on the outside looking in, trying to assess how they may have lived or how they may have thought. And so it's harder when you're on the outside looking in as opposed to when you're inside working and doing this stuff and then explaining it. So there's a lot of misinformation as far as outsiders go when they're actually trying to explain this. But at times I did understand the ancient Sumerian information a little bit more, and then at times I would flip-flop. I would go from ancient Egypt to ancient Sumer, and then I would come back, and then I'd flip-flop back and forth. And I did this probably for a couple of years, using the ancient Sumerian system of learning and then the ancient Egyptian system of understanding, and then I used the older ancient Atlantean information in order to add a deeper, older degree of synthesis to these two systems, and it worked very well, me doing that, right? Once again, there's that number 3, right? I did Atlantis, I did Kemet, and then I also did Sumer. One of the other things I did find interesting about the ancient Sumerians is that I read that the ancient Sumerians, they called themselves the black-headed people. So I'm under the assumption that the original people there were most likely, or they probably were African, or they probably were blacks. And then later on, they were invaded, and then that's where you have the Asiatic people coming in and then ruling them, and then the two cultures becoming blended. That's where you have the whole idea between Afro-Asiatic and things of that nature, right? But yeah, so those three systems worked really well. Once again, if you're interested in any of this, go back and check my videos on YouTube. For one, YouTube has all these videos. If you go to YouTube and look up Ancient Tree of Life, right? I believe that's what it is. I believe it's Ancient Tree of Life. You'll find all the videos there. If you're on my Instagram page, you can click on the link and it'll take you to a page that has the YouTube information on it. You can also view the videos on like this particular live broadcast. You can view this one and my older broadcast on the YouTube or on the Instagram page by clicking videos from the little highlights, this little highlight circle. You can click that and you can watch older videos. YouTube has all my videos on it from 2019 of last year. There's even some 2020 videos on there. The Facebook page is there as well. It's not as active as the Instagram page. The Instagram page is really active. It's great as far as people commenting and joining the live feeds. Also, people sharing their stories and also getting information back from me. YouTube is great for watching these videos, and also if you click the notification bell, you will get notified when there's a new live video like this one that comes out, and also when I upload or when I post a new video. So that's one of the great things about the YouTube channel. But Twitter is also a great little place to be. I'm on Twitter as Ancient Tree Life, not Ancient Tree of Life, because I couldn't get the URL, but Ancient Tree Life at twitter.com/Ancient Tree Life. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/Ancient Tree of Life. On Instagram, it's instagram.com/Ancient Tree of Life. And on YouTube, you just got to kind of click on, go to Instagram and click on the link, and then it'll send you off to the YouTube channel. So I think that's about it, you guys. This video right now is about 55 minutes. Instagram is going to start kicking me off here in probably in about 5 minutes or so. Just kind of want to wrap it up, answer any questions. And once again, this particular video is life, death, and rebirth, the cycles of reincarnation as far as an ancient Kemetic Egyptian perspective goes. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this. I'll be posting more pictures, more content on the Instagram page, because the Instagram page is really rocking right now. I'll be uploading videos as I create them, going over a lot of this information. And my goal is to help reestablish this connection, reestablish what was learned thousands of years ago. And because a lot of this information has been lost, or it's been lied about, or it's just not understood, right? And what I want to actually do is to help reestablish this framework, reestablish this cultural framework, reestablish the understanding of the... You should have pinned that. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Yeah. If you are on the Instagram page, which you are right now, when the video is over, click on the profile link, and it will actually send you off to YouTube. That it'll do. After this video, it won't send you off to the YouTube link. It will send you to the ancienttreeoflife.com webpage. The shows links will be ancienttreeoflife.com/shows, and on the shows page, there'll be a YouTube link. There'll be a podcast link, because I'm starting a podcast show, the Ancient Tree of Life spiritual show, right? So you'll be able to listen to this video, but also other, not necessarily this video, but more so other recordings that I have recorded that don't get turned into videos. And those are just as good, you guys. What I did was, over the course of like the last few years, I was recording information on my phone, right? I would talk into the phone when I'm driving somewhere, or when I was meditating here, right? While I was in the middle of a meditation, or when I started to do a meditation, or when I started to walk, because I have this thing right before I get into a mindset, I will walk around my table like 7 times, right? And that would get me into this mindset, and I would start talking about certain things, right? I would start talking to the energy and talking to the Neturu. And I would start verbalizing things. It would put me into this mindset, and then I would start to do my my prayers, my mantras, and my meditation, and that was also phenomenal. But those didn't necessarily turn into videos; they turned into recordings, which will be on the podcast show. What do you think of Freemason? What I think. The Freemasons came after the whole idea of Masonry, and Masonry was created from the ancient Kemetic Egyptians, who had learned the art science, right, of building, but also the things that you build having a reason or an alignment with something higher, right? So, for instance, when they built a temple, when the pyramids were built, it was in alignment with something, right? So that particular building had an energy about it because of its spiritual ability, or its spiritual energetic ability, right? So that is what Masonry kind of came from, the ability to build and also have it linked to a higher ideal. Also, these orders, they would have, they would kind of be like lodge orders, right? So you'd have these people that were unified under a particular ideology or order, and they were working together in order to produce a needed effect, whether it been to start a country, or whether it been whatever it was, right? So it was a particular type of order or something like that. Okay, so this video is coming to an end. I got 15 seconds, you guys. I want to say thanks for watching. This is Ray Eason with the Ancient Tree of Life channel. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment below. Go ahead and contact me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, and let me know if you have any questions. And thanks for watching. You guys are great, beautiful. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.